So now what we would like you to hear is how we as a church in 2013 are going to take those values and priorities that we share with the branch that you heard Chris talk about, and what we're going to be doing next to live into them or to live them out better. Now, this group of people, this is, I think all of you, I was going to say the well-dressed guy over there on the end is John Oosterman, but then I looked at all four of them and thought, I think all of you are dressed better than me this morning. That's right. That's John Oosterman, one of our deacons over there at the end. That's Jennifer Pickett, one of our elders. Tami Coyne, one of our deacons. And Russ Roseman, one of our elders. We are the group who do several things for RiverTree. We manage its money. We set policies. So if there are like written guidelines about anything, ultimately this group is responsible for that. But really the big thing, and you can ask any of them this, the big thing that we do when we get together is that every time we get together, we spend most of our time paying attention to what God is doing in our midst and what that means about what we need to do next, which leads to great conversations, lots of what-if conversations, and many of the things that have changed around here or have been improved around here have come directly from those conversations that we have once every other month. And it's very important for a church board, which is what we are together, to spend their time doing that instead of what Chris said, unfortunately, he has to do a lot of, which is talk about his building. We're fortunate. We don't have to do that. So what we did this week is we sent around via email to all of you who are on our church email list, plug for getting on the church email list, okay? We sent around the larger version of what we're going to present to you today, which we are calling I Am RiverTree. There are some hard copies of what we sent around, or some of it anyway, on the aisle stands. You're welcome to take those if you would like until we run out. Now just note, we don't have the time to go into the depth this morning of what we sent around or what's in print. What we're going to do is kind of hit the highlights or the important stuff, and then as 2013 plays itself out, you will begin to see more and more of the details. So, Russ, you're first, right? Russ is going to talk about this.
Yeah, okay, I'm on. No, the future. No, I did forget. Yeah. The future of RiverTree. Before we start talking about the future of RiverTree and what we're going to look like, it says we're going to look a lot like we are. Well, what are we now? And to describe that, I'll use an analogy. Now, Chris, you hit a home run with me when you used a sports analogy, because that's usually my gig. I'm always the sports analogy guy. So, but instead, I'll use an analogy of the automobile industry. Many of you probably don't know and would never guess that I actually have a marketing degree in, and when I was in college, we studied the automotive industry because obviously I went to college in Michigan, and back in the 70s, that was the only jobs available. So that we did a lot of study in the automotive industry. So my analogy is, RiverTree is more like the Mini Cooper car company, as opposed to Ford.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Ford, General Motors, Toyota, Honda, that make anything for anybody. And I'd say there's a lot of churches exist out, especially in West Michigan, that are Ford, General Motors, Toyota. They are everything to anybody and everybody. And as Chris used in a sports analogy, agility is a big component of that. We're small enough, like Mini Cooper would be, that we can get specific, and so that's who we are now. Where will we be, and how will we be better? We've spent the last year and a half. We've really been together about a year and a half as a steering team. Really intentionally focusing on becoming a New Testament, love your neighbor church, a second chapter of Acts church. We've done a lot of that intentionally through PC's teaching and through our discussions as a leadership team. So through that, as PC said, we spend a lot of our time kind of talking about what is God working on now? What is God blessing us with? What's successful now? And so we take that from you guys, as Chris said in his church. We're very similar in that aspect. We don't really want to do something and go make decisions and policies until it's brought to us. So we're at the point now where instead of developing that aspect of being a leadership team and being a church together, instead of the development stage of that, we're now moving into a time period where we can kind of perfect that, if you would. I don't know that we'll ever be perfect, but to hone that and become better at it. So that's how I think we'll be better in the future at what we're already doing now.
Okay, Tami's going to talk to you about this, which is an important transition that RiverTree needs to make from its season of transition to where we are now.
Well, it's funny I got chosen to do this whole talk about transition because I go back to thinking about when I first started at RiverTree and I met Krista Blay. I actually was baptized by Krista Blay, the first and only ever time I've been baptized. I'm not even going to tell you how old I was, but we won't go there. And then here I am now, I'm on leadership team. I mean, it just is so amazing to me where God and Jesus put me and wants me to stay. I just think it's amazing. And what I'm supposed to talk to you guys about is equipping you and us kind of helping you find out what you're good at, what you want to do in this life of our church, and then let us know what you want to do. So in other words, let's use a sports analogy. I don't have an automotive one, so basically you guys being the quarterback. We kind of went around this whole thing about the I am RiverTree thing, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I like that. I kind of like the we are RiverTree thing, but I do understand the I am RiverTree because together, we make the one big family. But so we want you guys to quarterback us. You guys, we need to find out what you guys want to do and, share that with us so we can help you.
Good. Jennifer is going to talk about a few piecemeal ideas that don't necessarily fit into those first two things, but they are insights that we have gleaned in our conversations with each other, but also through some other studies or research that we've had access to.
So there's a lot that we as a steering team feel that RiverTree does well, but there's a few areas that we feel like we could grow, can strengthen and improve, and that will be part of our focus over the next year. One of those is making disciples of Christ. It has been a blessing and a privilege to be able to serve your neighbor. I think we're doing that well, but God is, as Chris mentioned, He's called us to be out there making disciples of people. So spiritual growth is something that we're interested as well. It's really great to serve people, but we also need to be concerned about spiritual growth, bringing people back to the church also, in addition to bringing people to Christ. And that's something that we'd like to work on helping you feel like you can do that over the next year. So we will be addressing that. Also, as was earlier mentioned, we want to be able to better connect with people in the community. We did a demographic study last year, and it shows us clearly that there is a minority group of people in Kentwood or the Wyoming area here in Granville that would be perfect for RiverTree. In fact, they're looking for a church like RiverTree. So we need to continue to explore ways of better connecting with them. We've done some things. We've done some outreach events, some marketing campaigns. I will make no sports analogies here and just say that they weren't the most effective. So we're going to continue to look at other ways at reaching people and probably put less of an emphasis on such strategies in 2013. With that being said, we do know what works from looking at other church studies. I think PC has mentioned this before, but we know that many people, in fact, like 85% of people come to a church for the first time because they were invited by somebody they know or because they know the reputation of the church. So we're going to put our efforts, we want to take what limited resources we have and focus on doing what works. And finally, we're going to work on, I think one of the first things that we're going to work on this next year is in making a more effective integration, welcoming new visitors and integrating them into the body.
Good. Thank you, Jen. Yep. I was delegated to do the budget. I don't know why, but they want me to talk about money. So I'm going to keep it way up at the high level. If you want more detail about what's in the budget, look at that email I sent you or look at the written handouts that are on the aisle stands. Here's the big picture view, okay? Our expenses as a church are going to go up roughly $4,000 in 2013. What you need to know about that $4,000 increase is it's either all mandatory or it's all due to inflation. So it's not like we just decided to increase things at random. This is just the increase that needs to happen. For instance, our rent here goes up 4% every year. My medical insurance took a big bump. I'm sure I'm not the only one in the audience who saw their medical insurance go up this year. That kind of thing, okay? Now, this is also what we, and maybe I would say more importantly, you need to pay attention to. In the year we just finished, almost 17% of all the money that came into RiverTree went back out of RiverTree to either reach people or to care for people. Some of this is mandatory in that, for instance, we're a part of a denomination, we have to pay denominational dues. Those dues are part of that figure. But the bulk of that figure, about 2/3 of that figure, are things like the Barnabas Fund that we fund every month and we use to care for people both inside the church and we help you love your neighbor outside the church with it. Reaching Christmas is part of that number. I'm going to remind you of something that I've told you before. In the typical church, that figure is 1/3 the size of the one up on the screen. But because of the decisions we've made and because of the budget priorities we have, that's our number. And we want you to feel really good about that. You have been exceedingly generous. And we think you get it about what we as a church want to prioritize with the financial resources that God gives us. So knowing those first two slides, this is what we need to have happen. If we're going to pay those bills that are going up, and we want to keep the level of how much money we use to care for one another or reach out to other people, then we need the giving to go up from $29.64, which was the weekly giving in 2012, to somewhere around $30.50, give or take. And in order to accomplish that, we are asking that every adult attender at RiverTree seriously consider increasing their giving to RiverTree by $2 a week. Let me tell you why we chose that figure. You well know, and it's very important to us, that RiverTree is a sociologically diverse church. $2 a week is something that most of us can do. We don't want to pick a number that most of us can't do. Most of us can do this. Some of us can't, and if you can't, that's okay, because others of us can do well more than that. I can do more than that, personally. So, for us to pay our bills and for us to continue the high priority on reaching and caring with our money, we need you to all give about $2 a week more. Basically, go to Bigby once less a week, and you got this thing in the bag. If you buy what I buy, which is the 20-ounce generic $2.22 coffee. If you buy one of those big frou-frou drinks, you could do it like once, and you got it all covered in the month. All right, last, we're going to talk about a specific issue that Chris actually raised, and we've talked about, and we continue to talk about, but we wanted to give you an update on it, and to do that, John's going to talk about the issue of facilities.
Good morning. Yeah, and Chris, thank you very much for your presentation. It was nice to hear the kinship spirit that we share in reaching our community through various means, and the tough decisions that those require. And like the branch, we as a steering team have been asked about our facilities, our building, what the future holds for that. We've spent several minutes of each of our meetings talking about this because we've had those questions asked of us. Pastor Chris just finished talking about the budget, and one of the things that you should know is that every month, as part of our budget, we spend about $1,600 to $1,700 a month to pay for this facility, to use it one time, on Sundays each month. Some months obviously are 4 weeks and some are 5 weeks, so that's the difference. I'm not sure if I can say it any better than what was said earlier in the service, and what Russ and Tami and Jennifer have already shared with you. We as RiverTree have made a conscious decision, and Pastor Chris has spoken about it for several months now, of just loving your neighbor. Loving your neighbor requires not just our time and our efforts as individuals to go out and meet the person in your cubicle next door, or whoever or your mechanic or something like that, and talk to them about Christ. It also requires some financial support. We have decided collectively as a church to make that our priority, to love our neighbor. And therefore, we have decided to take the funds that we've been blessed with to pour into those efforts. Some of the results of those efforts is the Barnabas team. And over the course of since the relaunch of the Barnabas team that I am blessed to be a part of, and there's several other members here, we've been able to help you individually and sometimes as groups help your neighbors or your friends or your relatives financially, because we have made that a priority. So after we meet our financial obligations for the church, we take that extra money and put into the Barnabas Fund. At this time, we're just not seeing that God is calling us to pursue a building, but that doesn't mean that we're not always on the outlook for other opportunities. And we would challenge each and every one of you that if you come across an opportunity or something that you think might be a viable option for us as RiverTree to use to meet in, bring it to one of us, and we would be glad to look into that. God provides things through many ways, and it's not just us making those decisions or us looking for that. It's you taking a look at that and finding what may be out there. One of the things we've decided, one of the things that we've talked about, I shouldn't say we've decided, but one of the things that's important is that if we do look at new facilities for us to meet in, that we can use it not just on Sundays. There is so much in God's kingdom that needs to be done that requires more than just Sundays. We would look to you, as Tami was saying and as Jennifer was saying, to bring us ideas of how we can use the facilities 7 days a week, not just on Sundays. It's important that we look at that aspect of it, because if we want to love our neighbors, sometimes the facility is nice to have, but we would like that to be used. If we're going to be good stewards with God's money, we want to have that facility and use it, not just have it sit empty 6 days a week, and on Sundays we all come and gather in it. So we're always on the outlook for that. Again, it's not our primary focus. As Chris so nicely said, we feel that we're being sent out to do God's work, to make disciples, so that they can make disciples of other people. So that's where we're looking at as our mission. Again, Pastor Chris and I had shared a few emails as we prepared for today, and one of the things I guess kind of said in one of my emails was said, what I feel is that what we're about loving our neighbor, and not our neighbor loving our building. It's nice that people think we're a great building, but if we were to have that, but that's not what we're about. We're about each one of us reaching out and loving those that are next to us, whether it's our cubicle, whether it's neighbor right next door helping in the yard work, or whatever that may be. And I think that's where we want to be. So that's where we're standing right now in the building. And again, if you have any options or any questions, please feel free to ask any of us, and we'll be glad to answer any of those questions.
Good. Given the time constraints of a Sunday morning, that was kind of a 10,000-foot flyover, what I sent you via email this last week. If you want some more of the details, we'll talk about them in forthcoming weeks, but you can also go back and read what I sent you or the handouts that are on the aisle stands, and it will flesh out some of the ideas that you heard us talk about. I will point your attention to these slips that are on your chairs today. We would like every adult attender at RiverTree to take one, because on the back are the things that we're asking of you. These are the things that we would like all of us, not just a few of us, all of us at RiverTree to take personal responsibility for in 2013. So please take this, and we'll talk about these as we move forward into 2013 again, but this is where we start. Now, we're going to be available, all 5 of us, after the service if you want to come and ask a question. But look at that. Look at the time. Wow. Krista Blay, I'm sure we owe this to you for being succinct, but we wanted to set aside a couple of minutes in case somebody wanted to ask a question about anything that we've said, just so all of you can hear the same answer. Sometimes that's very valuable. So if anybody would like to ask anything about what we've said, by all means, feel free to do that. You need to raise your hand high, because remember, I don't see particularly well. And Heather, I'm sorry, but you're the closest one to me, so you get mic duty today. Okay?